The moment I stepped into the boardroom, I sensed something was off. The air was taut, as if it had been waiting for me to breathe before snapping back into place. Every face around the table was carefully neutral, too composed, like actors on the edge of a curtain call. I smiled anyway, tight and polished, the way I'd practiced in mirrors and mergers. After all, this was my empire. Meridian Tech wasn't just a company, it was a revolution I had nurtured from scratch. Marcus sat 2 chairs down in my line of sight. He didn't meet my eyes. That was the first red flag. Normally, he'd greet me with a subtle nod, maybe that half-smile he reserved for public optics. Today, he kept his gaze glued to the screen like it held his salvation. I took my seat at the head of the table and opened my tablet. The agenda showed the usual quarterly points: growth strategies, acquisitions, performance. No hint of what was coming. "Before we begin," Marcus said, his voice smooth as marble, "there's a matter we need to address immediately." I tilted my head, eyes narrowing just slightly. "And what matter is that?" He stood up, buttoning his jacket as though bracing for applause. "Effective immediately, the board has voted to remove you as CEO of Meridian Tech." A silence fell, so heavy it practically had a heartbeat. I heard it in my ears, loud and echoing. For a second, my brain refused to translate the words. Then, slowly, like thawing ice, the betrayal hit. I turned my head toward the board members, scanning the room. Karen, eyes lowered. Bill, face flushed. Terrence, suddenly engrossed in his coffee. Cowards. Marcus continued. "The board believes that Meridian Tech requires new leadership to stay competitive in today's evolving tech landscape." He paused, and that's when the door opened. Eliza Monroe walked in like a rehearsed villain, heels tapping against the wood like a countdown. She wore a power suit that still reeked of aspiration, and a smirk like she already owned the building. My stomach turned, but I didn't flinch. "I'd like to introduce your new CEO," Marcus said, eyes finally meeting mine with something that wasn't shame. "Eliza Monroe." She reached the table, nodding at the board members like a queen blessing her subjects. "Thank you for the opportunity," she purred. "I'm honored to guide Meridian into its next chapter." I let the silence stretch, just long enough for the weight of their audacity to hang thick in the room. Then I stood slowly, deliberately. Calm. Still in control. "Fascinating," I said. "But there's a small problem." Eliza raised a brow. "Oh!" I tapped a few lines into my tablet and cast it to the boardroom screen. My voice remained steady, surgical. According to Section 6.2 of Meridian Tech's governance charter, a CEO candidate must have 10 years of executive leadership within a Fortune 500 tech firm. Eliza, your resume indicates 5 years as a director at Luminet, a marketing firm, and a 2-year stint as an influencer on LinkedIn. A stunned hush dropped like a curtain. I let the words settle. "Which means," I continued, my gaze sharp, "this appointment is invalid. Nullified by our own charter." Marcus's jaw clenched. Eliza's smile faltered. I turned toward the board. "This was never about strategy. It was a coup. And you all, knowingly or not, participated in a violation of Meridian's founding charter. That has consequences." Karen shifted uncomfortably. Terrence started sweating. Bill suddenly looked like he regretted waking up this morning. Marcus tried to regain footing. "The clause is outdated." "It's hardly. It was updated last year," I cut in. "Approved unanimously. Including your vote, Marcus." I let that hang in the air, knowing exactly what I was doing. This wasn't just business, it was war. And I hadn't built this empire to watch it fall into the hands of my husband and his secret mistress. Eliza opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "You might want to consult legal before making another move. Every email, every meeting, documented. Every potential violation, archived." I turned off the screen and took my seat again. "Now then, shall we proceed with the agenda?" No one spoke. No one dared. Marcus looked at me with something that wasn't anger, but wasn't fear either. It was the look of a man who'd underestimated the very woman he thought he could outmaneuver. And that was his first mistake. Because while he was planning my downfall, I was reinforcing every exit. I watched as Eliza slowly backed toward the door, realizing her crowning moment had just been revoked. And I smiled, not for the win, but for the reminder. You don't try to dethrone the queen when she built the castle. The room was quiet now, eerily so. The kind of quiet that comes after a bomb explodes, when the dust still hasn't settled and everyone's too afraid to breathe. Eliza had slunk out of the boardroom like a ghost in designer heels, and Marcus hadn't said a word since. But I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I didn't get to the top by playing fair. I got here by playing smart. And while Marcus had spent the last 6 months orchestrating his little betrayal, I had spent the last 4 watching him closely. I turned to Priya Desai, my legal counsel and the sharpest mind I knew. She was seated quietly near the edge of the room, her briefcase already open, documents neatly stacked like weapons ready for deployment. I gave her the slightest nod. She stood and approached the head of the table. Members of the board, she began, her voice as crisp as autumn air, what happened here today constitutes more than just poor judgment. It borders on corporate sabotage. However, we've opted to give you a chance to correct your course. Marcus finally spoke. You're bluffing. Priya didn't even look at him. Let's discuss the financials of Stratwell Consulting. The projector lit up again, illuminating a series of bank statements, wire transfers, and shell company documentation. I watched as the color drained from several faces at once. Stratwell Consulting had been a ghost, on paper, a firm that provided market research services to Meridian. In reality, it was a siphon, designed to extract funds under the guise of performance-based incentives. And guess who its founding members were? Eliza Monroe, Priya said, pointing with her stylus, and Marcus Reed. Marcus laughed, a dry, broken sound. This is absurd. Is it? I said, finally standing. Because I've got 6 months' worth of financial statements, emails, and NDAs signed by both of you. Stratwell billed us $4.2 million in the last fiscal year alone. For what? Vague reports? No deliverables? You funneled money out of this company to fund your little takeover. And now I've got proof. The board members looked like they were witnessing a public hanging. Karen's hands were shaking. Bill had turned a shade I didn't know humans could turn. Now, Priya continued, her tone even, as legal counsel, I'm obligated to inform you that this constitutes fraud and embezzlement. However, Ms. Quinn is extending an option. You may choose to resign voluntarily today. Or we proceed to litigation, which includes turning everything over to the authorities. Jesus, someone muttered. I didn't know, Terrence said, blinking rapidly, as if that could erase his complicity. I thought Marcus said it was part of a competitive strategy. An outside advisory group. Oh please, I cut in, leveling my gaze at him. You signed off on payments without verifying anything. That's negligence at best. Collusion at worst. But I'm giving you an out. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. You think this changes anything? This company's bloated. You've lost touch. You're just saving your throne. No, I said coldly. I'm saving what I built from 2 laptops in my garage. You want to call it a throne? Fine. But I earned it. Priya began sliding resignation letters across the table, pre-written, names left blank. One by one, the board members stared at them, then at me. And then they signed. Karen. Bill. Even Terrence. Their pens scraped across the paper like guilty confessions. Only Marcus remained still, arms folded, lips tight. He was still calculating. Still trying to spin his way out. This isn't over, he muttered. Of course it's not, I replied, my tone as sharp as glass. You're not the type to accept defeat. But every time you play dirty, I'll be 5 moves ahead. That's what you forgot. He stood up, pushing his chair back roughly. You're making a mistake. I already made it, I said. When I married you. He stared at me like he wanted to say more, but the words died somewhere behind his clenched jaw. And then he left. Priya exhaled slowly. That went smoother than expected. I looked down at the resignation letters. It was never about them. Marcus was the infection. They were just symptoms. You know he's going to retaliate. I'm counting on it. She looked at me sideways. We'll need to tighten everything. Legal, security, PR. I already started last week. Have Arthur do a full sweep of our internal audit logs. I want every department combed, every expense reviewed. Anyone who so much as had coffee with Marcus in the last 3 months, I want names. Priya nodded, already typing notes into her tablet. And Eliza? She'll try to recover. Probably through media spin or trying to play victim. Let her. It won't work without the paper trail. I sat back in my chair, finally allowing myself a breath. The adrenaline hadn't worn off. It was still pulsing, cold and potent, but I had held the line. The empire stood. Marcus had tried to dethrone me with deception and greed. But he forgot the most important rule of war: never attack someone who built the battlefield. The office smelled different now. Not like fresh ambition or clean strategy, but like something old and bitter, like scorched nerves and betrayal. As I walked through the glass doors of the executive floor, everything looked the same on the surface. The minimalist design, the polished floors, the silent clicks of keyboards. But I felt it, the shift. Everyone was watching me out of the corners of their eyes, unsure whether to treat me like a survivor or a threat. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. Not today. After the boardroom showdown, I couldn't afford to assume anything anymore. Marcus had shown me that. Love couldn't be a shield, not in this world. Especially not when love turned into leverage. Lock the elevators to this floor, I told Marla, my assistant, without slowing down. No visitors. No external calls. If someone wants to meet with me, they go through Priya first. Nobody walks in unannounced anymore. Not even my parents. Marla blinked, nodded, and picked up the phone. I entered my office, shut the door behind me, and stood for a moment in the silence. My chair was where I left it. My name still gleamed on the plaque. But nothing felt the same. I sat down and opened the audit dashboard. Every department's financial flow danced in digital lines on the screen, numbers I used to glance at with casual authority. Now I combed through them like a surgeon looking for cancer. For minutes later, the first red flag popped up: an R&D expense for $78,000 routed through a shell LLC I didn't recognize. I clicked deeper. The LLC was registered 2 months ago in Delaware. No website. No employees listed. I picked up the phone. Priya, I found something. Get Arthur and bring him up here. Now. 10 minutes later, they arrived. Arthur, my head of cybersecurity, already had his laptop open before he reached my desk. Here, I said, spinning the screen. Dig into this. I want to know everything. Who authorized it, who received it, who signed off. On it, he muttered, fingers already flying across the keyboard. Priya folded her arms. He's still playing. This was a contingency. I nodded. Marcus doesn't quit. He doubles down. Arthur looked up, frowning. Savannah, this is just the tip. There's a whole trail behind this. I'm seeing multiple transfers to companies that don't exist beyond their P.O. box. He's been setting this up longer than we thought. I leaned back slowly, the weight of it pressing into my spine. I want every account frozen, every access key regenerated, and I want all internal messages from the last 90 days scanned for keywords: Stratwell, Nexicorp, Eliza. If anyone's been in on this, I want to know. Priya pulled out her notepad. We'll need NDAs updated across the board. Legal should initiate compliance drills immediately. If there's any part of this building Marcus still controls, we're ripping it out. Do it. I stared out the window, the city sprawling beneath me like a chessboard. We're not waiting for his next move. We take the board away. Arthur cleared his throat. There's something else. A message came through your personal inbox this morning. Encrypted. From Marcus. I froze. Show me. Arthur turned his laptop so I could see. It was a single line, buried beneath digital encryption and time-stamped exactly 1 minute after his exit from the boardroom. You think this ends with you? I read it 3 times. The calm that settled over me was sharp, not soft. Not fear or resolve. He's threatening escalation, Priya said. That could mean Nexacorp. He has ties to Donovan Hale, I replied. If he's selling our data, it won't be through Eliza. He'll go bigger. Then we respond bigger, Priya said, her voice like a blade. We need to prepare for a corporate war. I looked back at the screen. My name sat at the top of the organizational chart again. But it wasn't just a title anymore. It was a target. Send a company-wide notice, I said. No leaks. No rumors. Anyone who shares internal information externally will be terminated without severance. Arthur looked up. Savannah, morale's shaky already. I don't care. Let them be scared if they need to be. Right now, we don't need loyalty, we need silence. Priya didn't flinch. She understood. I'll prepare the release. I stood and walked to the glass wall overlooking the main floor. My team was still working below. Some heads lifted to glance up at me. Most looked away. I didn't blame them. Trust had cracked open like an egg dropped from the top floor. But I wasn't here to beg for trust. I was here to win. Because Marcus could keep playing games in the shadows, but I'd already lit the match. And I was more than ready to burn the whole damn board down if I had to. My mother's voice on the phone had that unmistakable tone, the kind she reserved for holiday dinners and intervention-style conversations. Savannah, your father and I would like to see you. Tonight. At the house. She didn't ask. She never asked. And I knew exactly why they were calling now Marcus. Of course he had already gone to them. Of course he'd spun some tale of heartbreak and corporate cruelty. I could practically hear him, polished and pitiful. She's not herself lately. The powers changed her. He always played the victim when cornered. I almost declined. Almost. But I was done letting him control the narrative. Let them hear it from me. I drove up to the old estate in Charleston just before dusk. The iron gates creaked open like a warning, and I pulled into the circular driveway lined with 2 perfect hedges and 2 bright lanterns. My mother met me at the door, arms folded, face tight. She didn't smile. You look thin. Hi, Mom. Good to see you too. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary and old expectations. My father was already in the formal dining room, seated at the head of the long mahogany table like a judge ready to issue sentence. He rose when I entered, but didn't come forward. Not a hug. Not even a handshake. Savannah, he said, voice gruff. We've been hearing troubling things. From Marcus? I asked, settling into the seat across from him, already bracing for the evening. My mother sat beside him. He came by yesterday. He was very upset. He said you removed him from his position without warning. That there was a misunderstanding. I let out a sharp breath. There was no misunderstanding. He orchestrated a coup to remove me from my own company and tried to install his mistress as CEO. My father blinked. Eliza Monroe? Yes. I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. She's not just some consultant. She and Marcus created a fake firm, siphoned millions from Meridian Tech, and planned to oust me. And they almost succeeded. My mother's hand fluttered to her chest. That's absurd. No. It's documented. Verified. Legal counsel has it all. I paused, watching their faces. And the only reason Marcus is not in jail yet is because I'm still deciding how much of him I want to destroy. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. My father finally spoke, his voice lower now. Why didn't you come to us sooner? Because the last time I asked for your support, you told me to let the man lead. I kept my tone even, though the memory stung. Because every time I made a move Marcus didn't like, you reminded me to keep the peace. Smile more. Be accommodating. That's not fair, my mother murmured. Isn't it? I shot back. You believed him before you even heard from me. That's the pattern. He says jump, and suddenly I'm on trial. They didn't have a defense for that. They just sat there older, smaller, confused. I continued, Marcus didn't just betray me. He mocked everything I built, everything you watched me build. He went after the company I started from nothing. He stole from me, lied. And you want to ask me to be civil? My father ran a hand through his thinning hair. We didn't know the full story. No, I said. You didn't ask. There was something sobering about saying it out loud. I had spent so long trying to make them proud, trying to fit into the family mold. But I wasn't built to be a daughter who deferred or a wife who swallowed betrayal with a smile. I stood up. I didn't come here for forgiveness or understanding. I came so you'd hear the truth before Marcus poisons it any further. Savannah, my mother started. But I cut her off. If you want to believe him, that's your choice. But don't expect me to carry the guilt of disappointing a version of daughterhood I never agreed to. I walked to the door, my heels echoing through the cold marble foyer. Just as I reached for the handle, my father's voice stopped me. I underestimated you. I turned. He wasn't smiling, but there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Respect, maybe. Or regret. Maybe both. I don't need you to believe in me now, I said. I just need you to stop standing in the way when I do. And then I left. Outside, the wind had picked up, tossing the Spanish moss like whispers from old ghosts. I climbed into my car, the engine purring to life beneath my fingers. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I was still now. Marcus had tried to pull the family strings like a puppeteer. He thought he could isolate me, humiliate me, turn them against me. But he forgot something crucial. He didn't marry a damsel. He married a storm, and I was just starting to thunder. Rumors spread through a company faster than any press release ever could. Within days of Marcus's failed coup, the mood at Meridian Tech had shifted again, but not in the way I'd hoped. There was a low hum of tension in every hallway, every break room, every Zoom call. People didn't look me in the eyes anymore. Some whispered when I walked past. Others just avoided me entirely. Not because they supported Marcus, but because they feared what might come next. And that was exactly what he wanted. Marcus wasn't gone. He was just outside the gates now, stirring the pot with the precision of someone who knew exactly where the cracks in our foundation lived. This wasn't over. It was evolving. Priya walked into my office that morning with a printout in hand, her face unreadable. That never meant anything good. I just got this from one of our marketing contractors, she said, setting the paper down in front of me. Apparently, Marcus is telling people that Meridian is about to go through massive restructuring. Layoffs. Downsizing. Says the company can't survive without him. I scanned the memo. It was a screenshot from an internal Slack conversation at Nexicorp, our biggest rival. Someone on their team had heard it directly from Donovan Hale himself. Marcus had been seen entering their headquarters 2 days ago. So he's making his move, I muttered, pushing the paper aside. Priya nodded. He's planting fear. If he can't beat you from the inside, he'll corrode your reputation from the outside. Undermine morale. Make it harder for you to lead. And it was working. HR reported an uptick in employees quietly shopping their resumes. Department heads were fielding panicked questions. Even my executive assistant, Marla, rock-solid Marla, had asked me if the company was safe. I stood from my desk, walking to the window. The city skyline blinked back at me, indifferent and unmoved. Let's stop reacting, I said. Let's strike back. Priya raised an eyebrow. You have a plan? I turned to her. We find out what Marcus is offering Nexicorp, and we hit it before they even have a chance to move. That afternoon, Arthur met us in the secure conference room with a USB drive and a smug look that told me he'd been dying to reveal something. He connected his laptop to the main screen and pulled up security footage. Marcus, in a navy blazer and sunglasses, walking into Nexicorp's parking garage. Then again 2 days later. He's meeting with Donovan Hale, Arthur confirmed. Private elevator. No appointment logs. But their building uses facial recognition for guest access. I cross-referenced the logs. 3 visits. All this month. Why now? I asked. Timing, Priya replied. After he failed to take over here, Marcus would need another vessel. Nexicorp's been chasing us for years. He's probably feeding them internal data, trying to sell them on a merger or a hostile acquisition. And they'd listen, I said grimly. Donovan would kill to have our AI patent library. Arthur clicked a few more times and pulled up a list of emails. There's more. One of our software engineers, Toby Klein, has been in contact with a Nexicorp IP address. We tracked outbound packets tagged with file extensions used in AI training modules. He's leaking something. I clenched my fists. Get him in here. Now. But Toby wasn't in the office. He'd taken an unexpected sick day. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Marcus wasn't just attacking morale, he was building a backdoor. If he couldn't run Meridian, he'd hollow it out and hand it to our enemies. Start an internal sting, I said. Watch every employee who's worked on AI projects in the last 6 months. Cross-reference vacation time, access logs, even Slack jokes. If anyone's talked about Nexicorp, I want to know. Priya sat forward. And what about the restructuring rumor? I turned to her slowly. We flip it. Excuse me. We announce a new initiative. Publicly. A massive employee growth program, bonuses, retention packages, cross-training, mobility. We don't just fight the rumors. We bury them. Her eyes lit with understanding. We kill the fear with opportunity. Exactly. We launch an internal campaign called Forward Together. Roll it out in 3 days. And make sure it leaks to the media strategically. Arthur nodded. I'll shore up network security and finish vetting the data streams. We'll catch Toby if he leaks again. Good, I said. Because the next time he so much as breathes in Nexicorp's direction, I want his badge disabled before he finishes his coffee. They left to mobilize their teams, and I remained behind, staring at the whiteboard where I used to scribble product plans and feature rollouts. Now it was covered in timelines, names, red circles of threat. This wasn't the job I signed up for, but it was the one I own now. Marcus thought he could weaponize fear. But fear is only effective when it has no counterbalance. So I'd give them something stronger. Direction. Loyalty. Momentum. He thought he was shaking the walls of Meridian Tech from the outside. But I had already laid the foundation in steel, and I wasn't done building. I was halfway through a call with Priya when Arthur burst into my office without knocking. He never did that. Not unless it was urgent. The look on his face said everything I needed to know before he even opened his mouth. We caught 2 engineers pulling files from the NovaCore AI repository, he said breathlessly. They were downloading proprietary data to an external drive. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back and hit the wall. Who? Darren Liu and Madison Kern, Arthur said. Both worked on the NovaCore project last quarter. They'd been reassigned, but someone reactivated their access keys. My stomach dropped. Marcus. He nodded. He had clearance as co-chair of systems security. He created a temporary admin protocol before he left, hidden in the back end. We missed it. Of course. Marcus always left himself doors to crawl through, like a rat who knew the house better than the architect. I grabbed my phone, voice tight with fury. Get Priya and HR in the executive room. Now. Tell security to detain both engineers quietly. No alarms. I don't want panic. Already done, Arthur said. They're in a holding office downstairs. I'm locking down all systems as we speak. Within minutes, the exec room was packed. Priya arrived first, followed by Marla, HR Director Trina Feldman, and a few key department leads who needed to know. The air was thick with adrenaline and fear. I stood at the head of the table, no time for preamble. We've confirmed an internal breach, I said flatly. 2 engineers attempted to extract proprietary data using access credentials Marcus left behind. Arthur has contained the leak, but we're operating under full lockdown until further notice. Trina looked visibly shaken. What were they planning to do with it? Arthur pulled up the activity logs on the screen. They were in the middle of uploading the files to a third-party cloud server. If we hadn't caught them, they would have had it out of our system in under 10 minutes. And who owns that server? Priya asked. He hesitated. It's registered under an alias. But the IP traces back to a Nexicorp proxy. A cold silence fell over the room. They're not just trying to hurt us, I said quietly. They're trying to gut us. Piece by piece. Trina leaned forward. What do we tell our employees? Nothing yet, I replied. We go into silent lockdown. All system access is suspended except to critical personnel. Arthur's team will reissue credentials to everyone else after reauthentication. Priya, I want legal documents drawn up. Anyone caught with a leak, even a suspected one, will face prosecution. She nodded. And Darren and Madison? We terminate immediately, I said. Issue NDAs. If they try to talk, we sue them into oblivion. For a moment, no one moved. Then Arthur said what everyone else was thinking. Marcus won't stop. You know that, right? I'm counting on it, I said. Let him escalate. Let him overplay his hand. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. One line. Still think you're untouchable? I stared at it, then showed it to Priya. He's taunting you, she said. He wants to rattle you into a mistake. I shook my head. No. He wants me to feel surrounded. To think there's no one left to trust. But here's what he forgot. I've been underestimated before. It never ends well for the other party. Priya looked at me, her gaze steady. We can go public. Now. Take this out of the shadows. I considered it. She was right. Marcus thrived in whispers and rumors. He planted seeds, then let people imagine the worst. If we dragged the truth into the light, we could control the story. All right, I said. We go public. Release a statement to the press by end of day. Brief, direct, unapologetic. Confirm the breach. Emphasize that we've contained it. Announce we're cooperating with the SEC. Let the world see that we're not scrambling, we're reinforcing. Marla scribbled notes rapidly. And mention Marcus by name, I added. No more hiding behind implications. You sure? Priya asked. Yes. Let him feel the heat of public exposure. Let Nexicorp see exactly who they're aligning themselves with. By evening, the company was under digital quarantine. No employee could access even their email without going through 2 levels of clearance. IT was on 24-hour rotation. HR was running background checks on every consultant we'd worked with in the last 6 months. I sat in my office well past midnight, watching the glow of the city as the press release hit the wire. The headlines arrived one by one. Meridian Tech confirms internal breach. CEO Savannah Quinn blames former executive. Whistleblower or corporate saboteur. The Marcus Reed scandal deepens. SEC launches preliminary inquiry into alleged tech espionage. I leaned back in my chair, letting the chaos swirl around me. He thought he could chip away at me. He thought fear would make me fold. But I'd been sharpening myself on pressure for years. And I wasn't built to break. The storm broke just after dawn. Not in the sky. There were no clouds this morning, but in the news cycle. My name, Marcus's face, Eliza's fraudulent consulting firm, all of it lit up every financial blog, tech news site, and social feed like a corporate wildfire. It started with the press release we'd sent last night. But it grew fast. By noon, the SEC had officially acknowledged a preliminary investigation into fraudulent financial activity connected to Stratwell Consulting, the shell company Marcus and Eliza had used to embezzle millions from Meridian Tech. I sat in the glass-walled conference room with Priya, Arthur, and our newly appointed head of PR, Jenna Ford. Jenna's phone buzzed every 30 seconds. She had 3 screens open, all tracking real-time coverage. One screen played Bloomberg's midday segment. Another monitored Twitter trends. The third flashed our own internal analytics, employee sentiment, consumer trust, investor confidence. We're holding, Jenna said, finally looking up. In fact, we're gaining. There's some fallout, always is, but the narrative's on your side. You're being framed as the CEO who caught the criminals inside her own house and took action. Good, I said. I was sitting upright, composed, but every cell in my body was vibrating with tension. Not fear, momentum. Keep feeding outlets the verified documentation. We want them to chase what's real, not the noise Marcus is going to stir up. Jenna nodded. Already in motion. And the finance blogs are eating it up. Especially the part about how Stratwell billed us $4.2 million for AI behavioral alignment analysis and delivered nothing but word salad. Priya let out a dry laugh. It's not just fraud. It's laughably amateur fraud. Arthur leaned in, serious. We have to stay ahead of him. Marcus still has contacts. He'll try to spin this. He already has, I replied, pulling out my phone and opening a leaked email thread forwarded by a friend in the industry. Marcus had apparently sent a mass message to former Meridian employees and industry executives. It read like a desperate attempt to twist the narrative. What Savannah won't tell you is that this was a personal vendetta disguised as justice. She's using company resources to settle a score. The innovation pipeline is drying up. Meridian won't survive her reign. I passed the phone to Priya, who rolled her eyes as she read. He really thinks the industry will side with him over documented SEC violations? Marcus doesn't care about truth, I said. He just wants enough smoke that people can't see clearly. But we're going to be louder than the smoke. Jenna looked up from her laptop. Donovan Hale released a statement 15 minutes ago. I stilled. From Nexicorp? She nodded and turned her screen toward me. The official press release was short but effective. Nexicorp distances itself from recent allegations involving Marcus Reed. Mr. Reed has never been an employee or consultant for Nexicorp. We support ethical innovation in all our partnerships and condemn corporate sabotage in any form. I let out a slow breath. So, they're backing away. They don't want to get dragged down with him, Priya said. You burned the bridge he was walking on. Good, I murmured. Let him swim alone. The real victory, though, wasn't external. It was inside these walls. For the first time in weeks, I saw shoulders easing in the hallways. Eyes that met mine again. Staff who smiled when they passed me, instead of glancing away. That was the truest measure of progress, when your own people started believing in you again. Later that afternoon, I gathered the entire company on a live all-hands video call. It wasn't flashy, just me, standing in front of a simple backdrop in the broadcast room. No teleprompter, no filter. Just truth. Today, you've seen our name in headlines for all the wrong reasons, I began, meeting the lens with steady eyes. I won't pretend it's been easy. The betrayal we've experienced came from someone we trusted. Someone I trusted. That's personal. But this company doesn't crumble because of broken trust. We repair it. I paused. Let the silence breathe. I want you to know we caught the leak. We contained the damage. And we're cooperating with federal investigations to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. More importantly, we're still building. Meridian Tech is still innovating. Still creating. Still hiring. The feed showed a gallery of employees watching from their desks, homes, and devices. Dozens of faces. Hundreds. I know it's hard to trust again after something like this. But I promise you, this company belongs to the people who believe in it, not to those who tried to sell it from under us. When I ended the call, the applause emojis, chat messages, and internal Slack threads lit up. It wasn't just damage control. It was resurrection. By the time the sun dipped behind the skyline, the day's headlines had shifted again. Meridian Tech emerges from crisis with swift CEO action. Savannah Quinn, from betrayed to battle-tested. Marcus Reed unreachable for comment as SEC scrutiny grows. I returned to my office and stood alone at the window, staring out at the lights across the city. Marcus had tried to bury me under deception. But instead, he'd handed me a microphone. And I was just getting started. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m., but I was already there by 8:15, sitting in the glass conference room where this entire war had started. I'd ordered the staff to leave it exactly as it had been. Same chairs, same long oak table, same air of sharpened silence. It was a deliberate choice. Let Marcus walk into the same battlefield. Let him feel the weight of where it all fell apart. Priya sat across from me, calm as ever, reviewing the final document. She was dressed in navy today, professional, commanding. She knew the theater of this was just as important as the legality. We weren't just ending a chapter. We were ending an era. "Are you sure you want to offer him this out?" she asked. "I'm not doing it for him," I said. "I'm doing it for Meridian. For closure." The door opened, and Marcus walked in, 10 minutes late. Of course. He looked like he'd tried to polish himself for the occasion. Tailored gray suit, freshly cut hair, a smug calm on his face. But he didn't carry the same arrogance he once had. There was something hollow beneath the confidence now. A man performing an outdated version of himself. He sat down without a word. I didn't offer one either. Priya broke the silence. "Marcus, thank you for agreeing to meet. You know why we're here." "I assume Savannah's finally realized the circus needs to end," he said, eyes flicking to me. "All that exposure, the investigations, you're playing with fire. For what? A few headlines?" I didn't blink. "No. For truth. For every employee you made question their worth. For every dollar you stole. For every lie you sold as leadership." His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Priya slid the agreement across the table. "This is a legally binding non-compete. By signing, you agree never to work in the tech or finance sector again in any executive, advisory, or board capacity. You relinquish any residual claims to Meridian Tech, past, present, or future. And in return," he asked. "We won't pursue criminal charges," I said. "You walk away. Quietly. Permanently." Marcus scoffed. "You think I'm just going to sign away my career?" "You don't have one anymore," I said coolly. "You're toxic. Nexicorp disavowed you. Stratwell is a federal investigation now. You think there's a single investor, board, or firm that will touch you after this?" He looked at the document again, jaw working. "You're bluffing." "No," Priya said. "She's winning. There's a difference." For a long moment, he didn't move. I could see the calculations running in his head. What would happen if he signed? What might happen if he didn't? He was trying to find a crack, a way back in. "You used to be merciful," he said quietly, looking at me now. "You used to love me." I felt that sting for only a second. Then I let it go. "I did love you," I said. "And I was merciful. That's how you got this far. But love doesn't excuse betrayal. And mercy doesn't mean weakness." He hesitated again. "If you don't sign," I continued, "the charges go forward. I've already spoken to the SEC. The DOJ's cybercrime unit is reviewing your activity logs. Your best-case scenario is a 10-year ban from corporate governance. Worst case? Prison." He finally looked at the pen in front of him. His hand hovered above it. "What will you do when you run out of enemies?" he asked. I smiled, but there was no softness in it. "Build without interruption." He signed. It was anticlimactic, really. One scribble. One clink of pen against wood. And just like that, Marcus Reed, the man who tried to steal my company, ruin my name, and sabotage everything I built, was done. Priya collected the papers, checked the signatures, and gave me a small nod. "It's over." Marcus sat back, shoulders slumped just slightly. "You won," he said. I leaned forward. "I didn't want to win, Marcus. I wanted to work beside someone I could trust. Someone who understood that building something wasn't about ego. You didn't lose because I beat you. You lost because you couldn't stop trying to win." He didn't reply. When he left the room, the silence felt different than it had at the start. Lighter. Cleaner. Like the infection had finally been excised. Later that day, the headlines rolled in. Marcus Reed signs non-compete, exits tech world amid scandal. Meridian Tech CEO Savannah Quinn finalizes legal victory. From boardroom betrayal to corporate redemption, Savannah Quinn's strategic triumph. I stood at the top floor of the building that still bore my fingerprints in every corner and looked out over the city. Below, the machine of Meridian kept moving, product teams innovating, engineers rebuilding, analysts forecasting. Marcus thought I was just a name he could erase with a vote. But I wasn't just a name. I was the architect of the foundation he stood on. And now I was the last one standing. The sun was just dipping below the skyline when I stepped out of the elevator and into the parking garage. The day had been long, full of handshakes, strategy meetings, and cautious optimism from department heads who were beginning to breathe a little easier. I had survived the war. No, I'd won it. But wars, even victorious ones, never leave you untouched. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Sharp. Familiar. I turned. Marcus stood there, leaning against a concrete pillar as if he'd been waiting. No suit this time. No smug grin. Just jeans, a plain gray shirt, and tired eyes. "I figured you might be working late," he said. I didn't answer. I just kept walking until I reached my car. He didn't follow. But he didn't leave either. "I signed the papers," he said, voice carrying across the garage. "You got everything you wanted." I turned slowly, folding my arms. "That's where you're wrong. I didn't want this. Any of it. I wanted us to build something together. I wanted a partner. I wanted you to be proud of me instead of threatened by me." He didn't speak. "You were my husband, Marcus. I let you in, trusted you, handed you access to every level of my life. And you used that trust to try and take it all away. Do you even understand what you've done?" "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I came to ask you one question." My jaw tightened. "Fine. Ask." He stepped forward, hands in his pockets, his face surprisingly open. "Did you ever love me? Or was I just convenient?" I blinked, surprised not by the question, but by the weight it still carried. After everything, after the sabotage, the lies, the months of manipulation, he still wanted to know if it had been real. I looked at him, really looked. At the man I once held in my arms on rooftops under the stars, the man I danced with barefoot in our kitchen, the man who once whispered my name like it was something sacred. "I did love you," I said softly. "More than I should have. I loved you when I was exhausted. I loved you when your insecurities started to eclipse your promises. I even loved you when I saw pieces of the man you could have been. But somewhere along the way, you started loving power more than you loved me." He swallowed hard, the truth hitting him somewhere between his chest and his pride. "I didn't plan to fall for Eliza," he said. "It just happened." "No," I said. "It didn't just happen. You made choices. You cultivated a lie and watered it with ambition. You didn't just betray our company, you betrayed me." He looked down at his shoes. "I know." There it was. Not an apology, but maybe the closest thing I'd ever get to one. "I lost everything," he said after a pause. "You, the company, my career, my name." I held his gaze. "You didn't lose it. You gambled it away. And now you're standing in the ashes wondering why you're cold." Silence stretched between us. It wasn't angry anymore. Just heavy. "I never thought it would end like this," he murmured. "Neither did I." Another beat of silence. Then he asked, "Do you think I'll regret this for the rest of my life?" I nodded. "If you're lucky, you will." He smiled faintly, like he knew it was deserved. "You're stronger than I gave you credit for." "No," I said. "I've always been strong. You just stopped looking." He took a step back, like the conversation had drained something from him. "I guess this is it then." "It is." He hesitated, then said, "Take care of yourself, Savannah." "I already am." He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the near-empty garage. No dramatic exits. No final stabs. Just a man walking away from the wreckage he caused, carrying nothing but regret. I stood there for a long moment, letting the silence settle. It was the first time in a long while that the quiet didn't feel like pressure. It felt like clarity. I got into my car and stared at the dashboard before turning the key. I had faced him. I had told the truth. And now the door, one I had kept cracked open for far too long, was finally closed. Not slammed. Not locked in rage. Just closed. He'd asked if I'd ever loved him. I had. Deeply. But love without respect is a slow poison. And I had finally stopped drinking it. As I pulled out of the garage, I caught my own reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look hardened. I looked free. Marcus could walk into his next chapter dragging chains of his own making. I would walk into mine with nothing but resolve. The morning after Marcus left for good, I arrived at the office before sunrise. The building was still asleep, no voices, no footsteps, just the hum of the air systems and the soft buzz of electricity flowing through walls that had seen betrayal and redemption in equal measure. I stood alone at the top floor, my heels silent against the concrete, watching the soft lavender glow of dawn spill across the city. It felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in months. Meridian Tech wasn't just standing, it was thriving. Our legal team had navigated the fallout with precision. Investor confidence was rising again. The board had been rebuilt with people who believed in vision, not vanity. And every corner of the company, engineering, marketing, operations, was breathing new life into projects we'd shelved during the chaos. But this morning, I wasn't thinking about numbers or strategies. I was thinking about the weight I had carried and the woman who'd carried it. I walked into my office, now quiet and uncluttered, and sat at my desk. There was a letter resting on top of the inbox tray, cream-colored, handwritten. My name in my mother's elegant cursive. I opened it slowly, expecting something guarded, maybe even apologetic in tone. But what I read made me pause. Savannah. We watched the press conference. We read the articles. And for the first time in our lives, we saw you. Not the version we thought you should be. The real you. The woman who stood against an empire crumbling beneath betrayal and refused to let it bury her. The daughter who never asked for applause but earned every ounce of respect we failed to give. We're ready to try again, if you are. Not as critics. As family. Love. Mom and Dad. I stared at the words for a long moment, then pinned the letter to my bulletin board, not as a prize, but as a reminder. Trust, once broken, could be rebuilt, but only through truth and effort, not guilt or obligation. There was a knock at the door. Marla peeked in, coffee in hand. You've got 15 before the strategy summit. Want to review the rollout deck? In a bit, I said, motioning for her to leave the coffee and go ahead. I wasn't done with this moment yet. When she left, I rose and walked to the window. This company started with 2 laptops, a beat-up coffee maker, and a rented WeWork space. I'd poured everything into it, my ideas, my energy, my belief in something smarter, faster, cleaner. Marcus had stood beside me once. I hadn't imagined that. But somewhere along the way, he lost sight of the dream and started chasing the power instead. And I had spent too long thinking I had to keep fixing things, smoothing over the cracks, preserving the illusion of unity. Until the illusion shattered. And now I saw the truth with painful clarity. Letting it shatter was the best thing that ever happened to me. I had emerged not as a CEO scorned, but as a woman redefined. One who wasn't just willing to lead, but capable of rebuilding what others tried to tear down. One who understood now that strength wasn't just in holding your ground, it was in knowing when to burn the bridge and build a better one. I walked back to my desk and opened the project board. Our engineers had already begun early development on the Polaris initiative, our most ambitious AI system yet. It had the potential to change how logistics worked globally. The kind of innovation that would have once terrified me to pursue during a crisis. But now, it felt like a beginning. I added a note to the board, Q3 preview, internal demo July 1st. A new milestone. A clean line in the sand. I glanced again at the letter from my parents and smiled. Not a victorious smile. A settled one. We weren't fixed, but we had something new, the will to mend. And maybe that was enough for now. I walked toward the glass door, paused, and looked around one more time. Everything I saw had nearly been stolen by the man who promised to love me and the woman who thought I was just a hurdle to clear. But they were gone now, and I was still here, unshaken, unmoved, unapologetically standing in the center of everything they tried to break. I stepped into the hallway, the buzz of employees starting to fill the floor. Familiar voices, the clack of keyboards, the first rounds of morning laughter. Life. Purpose. Legacy. Not everyone gets the chance to defend what they built and walk away stronger. But I did. And I would carry that not like a crown, but like armor. The war was over. Now it was time to lead on my terms in my voice with no shadows at my back. Let the world watch. Because this was just the beginning.